Yeah, sure.
Well, there we are. We're live.
Here we are.
I'm
Back
glad I
again.
made that little placeholder screen. It's perfect since we were running late today.
We arrive precisely when we intend to.
Well, no, because we intended to arrive at 7 p.m. 7:03.
I meant to arrive when I intended to.
Oh.
Hello, Willow. Welcome. Hello, Pampians. Welcome. She's hanging out. She's ready to listen.
The renovation mess is behind us again.
Yes, renovation. Forgive us for the clutter behind us.
It will hopefully be gone
But you can see Rexy, so that's always a
by
plus.
next week's Thursday stream. That's true. He looks very ferocious.
She.
Sorry. They can change gender.
She is a she.
We don't know that.
It's canon that she is a she. Her name is
Okay,
Rexy.
fine. It's unisex.
She's lovely and ferocious. Look at her. Don't ruin this for me. She's a great role model.
So, what happened last time in All the Young Dudes?
They turned back time. They found
That was last time.
way.
That was last time. The time
And
before last time.
they found out and got in trouble.
They messed around and found out. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, because they had their little fight.
Yeah.
Sirius didn't think the little bit at a time was good enough, so he just went buck wild.
Yep. And then everyone found out, and then Dumbledore found out, and then him and McGonagall talked to the Marauders, and Dumbledore was like, pretty good prank, guys.
Yeah.
But,
you're still in trouble.
But you're still in trouble, and McGonagall's gonna decide your punishment. And then Sirius opened his fat mouth and made it worse for everyone.
Yeah, 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
3 weeks of detention. So that's how long they were doing it.
Yep.
We only got to read that one chapter last week, so...
Yeah, we didn't get very far.
That's why we're starting this one a little bit earlier, because we'll be doing the chat with Noel a little bit earlier. So hopefully we can get through 2 or 3 chapters.
Should I just start?
Yeah. Because I feel like there was something I was going to ask you, but honestly...
Oh, do you have a question for me?
You know, I normally do, and I did, but I completely forgot it, so...
All right, then.
And we want to get as far as possible, so it's better this way.
All right. Chapter 36. It is not chapter 36.
No.
No,
it's not. So we're like halfway.
I know. Chapter 63. 4th year.
Do you have dyslexia?
December.
Can you develop that over time?
No, shut up. I'm torn between light and dark, where others see their targets. Divine symmetry. Should I kiss the viper's fang, or herald loud the death of man? I'm sinking in the quicksand of my thoughts, and I ain't got the power no more. Wednesday, 4th of December, 1974.
Sorry, you said Wednesday, kind of like a British hick accent. Wednesday.
Apologies.
I'm just picturing a British person living in Alabama now. This is great.
Apologies to everyone for that. Now my cheeks are very red because you've embarrassed me.
Oh, don't be embarrassed. It was great.
They were all given 3 weeks' detention with McGonagall, which meant lines and extra homework, and were banned from Hogsmeade until the new year, much to Peter's horror. Poor Miss Lewis would have to wait. This also meant that Remus wouldn't be able to buy any Christmas present for his friends, but he was grateful for that excuse. He'd so far amounted a small fortune, in his eyes anyway, of 10 galleons and 12 sickles. It wasn't anywhere near James's inheritance, of course, or even Sirius's bequeathal from his uncle, but it was more than Remus had ever had, even in Muggle money. He'd already started making plans for the moment he turned 17. Learning how to apparate was key. He had to be sure to get that right. Then he would buy enough supplies and begin his search, and he thought he knew where to start. This term, ever since he'd been back at Hogwarts, Remus had been reading the Daily Prophet cover to cover. He borrowed James's copy and made notes privately, usually in the library, where the other Marauders wouldn't bother him. He was looking for anything: attacks, sightings, rumors, anything related to werewolves or unidentified dark creatures. There was very little in there. James maintained that this was because the Ministry didn't want to frighten anyone. But there were still clues. Sometimes there were stories about auras breaking up illegal gatherings or meetings, always in distant, far-flung places, the Outer Hebrides or the Brecon Beacons, and they were always the night before the full moon. This was solid evidence as far as Remus was concerned. Greyback was gathering followers, and no one else seemed to care. Even the auras were being casual about it, just like they had been with Lyle. By early December, Remus was concerned enough to consult Ferox. This year's Care of Magical Creatures syllabus had proved to be just as fascinating as the years before, and Ferox's dedication to teaching had not waned. He'd even hinted at bringing in a real demiguise, as a Christmas treat, though Remus had no idea where he was going to get one. The teacher had taken them all down to the lake for one lesson, where Ferox held a long, high-pitched conversation with one of the mer people who lived there. No one had the foggiest clue what they were talking about, but it had been interesting nonetheless, and Remus had made some very useful diagrams. It was armed with these diagrams and the accompanying essay that Remus approached Ferox's office one gloomy afternoon in December. Since both Sirius and James were now on the Quidditch team, it was much easier for Remus to sneak away and conduct his own personal business, lately either werewolf hunting or as Hogwarts' premier tobacco supplier. Lily had asked if he wanted to go to the library with her. He thought she must be feeling a bit lonely this term, as she was often asking if he wanted to go here or there with her.
Yes, lonely.
He hadn't noticed that she was spending any less time with Mary and Marlene, but who knew with girls? Anyway, having extricated himself from all other responsibilities, Remus knocked purposefully on the door of Ferox's office. "Come in," the familiar Liverpudlian sing-song voice called out. Remus smiled and stepped inside. "Hi, Professor," he said, clutching his papers. "Lupin! Sit down, sit down." Ferox beamed up at him from behind his desk. He appeared to be making repairs to a very large golden cage, his desktop covered with tools and wire and other oddments which didn't seem to belong in a teacher's office. "I've got my merfolk essay here." He put it down on the only free bit of surface open. "Blimey, Remus, you're keen." Professor Ferox smiled, tidying away his tools into a leather pouch. "That wasn't due until the last day of term." Remus shrugged, secretly thrilled. "I had it finished, so I thought I might as well hand it in now." "Very good. Fancy a tea?" "Yes, please." Ferox pushed the large cage to one side and waved his wand casually. Ferox's wand was shorter than Remus's and thicker, made of some knobbly type of wood, as if snapped directly from a tree branch. A teapot appeared from nowhere, closely followed 2 cups and saucers which clattered noisily onto the table. They were quite old and chipped in places. "Oops!" Ferox grinned bashfully. "Never had much finesse with charms. That's me old Nan's set too." Remus smiled politely and used his own wand to pour the tea. He found levitation very easy, and Ferox looked impressed. "Nan used to drink it from the saucer and everything," he murmured nostalgically, lifting the cup to his lips. "Thought it was elegant. Bless her." Remus never knew what to say when people started talking about their relatives. It had taken him 4 years to learn that people who had families did not really want to hear about the experiences of people without them. It made them uncomfortable. Ferox seemed to notice Remus's polite reticence and changed tact. At this point, my nan would offer a biscuit and a cigarette, but I'm afraid I've run out of both. Remus raised an eyebrow and fished inside his pocket. Here, sir, he said, offering a box of Marlboros. Ah, so the rumours are true. Our resident bootlegger. Remus shrugged again, carefully trying to mask his excitement as Ferox actually accepted a cigarette and lit it neatly with his wand point. How'd you do that? He asked, trying it with his own wand, to no avail. Ferox chuckled. Come here, and Remus leaned across the desk to allow Ferox to light his cigarette. I better not teach you, the teacher winked. It's a terrible habit. Remus grinned through the cloud of smoke, taking a long drag. So, Ferox said, leaning back in his chair, I take it this is more than just a social visit, young Lupin. Yes, sort of, Remus nodded, clearing his throat. I just had a few more questions about... Well, I don't know who to ask, and you said last year I could always come to you. Of course. Is it about your father? Oh, no. Remus shook his head vehemently. Not him. He may have sounded a bit more forceful than he meant to, but he was sick of Lyle Lupin and the awful, hollow, guilty feeling he got when he thought about the man. He didn't want to know any more about the past. This was about the future. Remus took another puff, letting it steady his nerves. It's about Greyback. Remus, I deserve to know, he said, darkly, losing his smile. It's my life. Ferox looked at him for a long time before sighing. Just like your dad. Oh, okay. What do you want to know? Not that there's much I can tell you, mind. Far as anyone knows, he's still a wanted fugitive. The articles you gave me. One of them said that the ministry thought he was trying to raise an army. That's why he likes... children. That's just a rumour, Ferox said, brows knit together. There's no evidence. I'm evidence, Remus said, unconsciously pressing a hand to his side, where the worst scar of all was hidden underneath his uniform. It still doesn't mean... Well, if he'd been trying to do that in the 60s, then you'd think we'd know about it by now. Then you think we know about it by now, eh? That was a spurious line of reasoning, in Remus's opinion. He waved a hand. There've been attacks. If you've read the papers properly, the Dark Lord, he's the perfect person to encourage Greyback, from what I've heard. Something needs to be done to stop people joining them, to stop people like me from joining him. I don't know what you know about the so-called Dark Lord, Ferox replied stiffly, but he's only interested in blood purity. He would consider someone like Greyback a half-breed beneath him. Remus thought of Snape and the other Slytherins and immediately dismissed this theory too. He might not respect him, but as long as Greyback gets the job done, and if he gets enough followers... You're overestimating his power. Both of them. The Dark Lord is just a political upstart, feeding off some perceived oppression. No one takes him seriously. No one who matters. And Greyback, well, he's practically a derelict, a raving lunatic. Neither of them have anything substantial to offer their followers. Remus snorted. Yeah, well, the ministry doesn't exactly have much to offer me, except for a collar and a barred cell. Remus, that's not true. Ferox sounded distressed. Remus didn't care. Yes, it is. I'm nearly 15. I'm not a little boy. My job prospects are only slightly less shit as a muggle than they are as a wizard. Can't help but notice I'm the only one at Hogwarts. Can't help but notice I'm not supposed to tell anyone. Oh, wait, until I'm 17, then I'll have to tell everyone, right? Then everyone else gets to avoid me in case I get a bit peckish. Greyback might not have much else to offer us half-breeds, but then you haven't got a lot else offering... But then you haven't got a lot else going for you. Remus, you've got... No, I've read the laws and the statutes and the bullshit fucking registry. He stubbed out his cigarette in the dregs of his teacup furiously. The full moon was weeks away, but his temperature was rising. His heart was pounding as he glared at Ferox, challenging him to answer. Ferox himself looked quite shaken, struck dumb. This in and of itself cooled Remus's temper. He'd meant to have a rational discussion. He had wanted to learn things, not yell at his favourite teacher. He pulled out another cigarette and lit it with the matchbook he carried, then pushed the box across the desk to Ferox. "Keep it," he said, quietly inhaling. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to shout." "It's okay to shout, Remus," Ferox smiled weakly. "Especially when someone isn't listening, and you need to be heard." Remus looked at him quizzically. Ferox relaxed a bit. "I think you see anger as a weakness, but it isn't. It's good to be angry, and you've got bloody good reason to be. You're right. We all need to worry about Voldemort, and Greyback, and the rest of the pure-blood crowd. If the Ministry is prepared to treat good, clever, thoughtful wizards the way they treat you, then people like the Dark Lord will always have followers." Remus stared at him, stunned. "But," Ferox said, "there will always be people working against them too. And as long as we stay angry, they won't win." "They won't win," Remus repeated. He usually felt embarrassed after an outburst like that, but now he actually felt calmer, relieved even. "And don't you think for a minute that you have shit prospects?" Ferox raised an eyebrow. "If you think Dumbledore moved heaven and earth to get you an education just to see you end up no better than a squib, then you don't know Dumbledore, my boy."
Well, what a shot to squibs.
I mean,
Filch should feel awful.
we haven't finished the
so.
chapter, but I am going to go ahead and say that, Filch should feel awful, but Filch is also a really terrible person.
But maybe it's because he feels so awful because that's how they treat squibs.
He does have to clean up magical messes.
Without
magic.
And he has to clean the owlery.
Yeah.
And also, Ferox just yes, let the anger flow through you.
"Remus, have I ever told you the story of Darth Plagueis?"
You can move this way a little bit. You're out of the shot. You're right on the edge of the frame.
Well, that's not my fault, is it?
Well, I gave you room.
I know, but you always sit right in the middle.
Yeah, I kind of was in the beginning. Yeah.
You always do that. You always sit right in the middle.
It's okay. My bad.
You can't justify that. You just do it. I know. It's okay.
All right. Oh, that was only halfway through the chapter.
That was halfway through.
Okay.
Yeah,
we stopped. I thought we were done with the chapter.
This is a long boy.
I see that.
Friday, 20th of December, 1974. As December drew on and the nights grew longer, the castle became engulfed in fairy lights and a heavy blanket of snow. Everyone seemed in higher spirits than usual and more excited to celebrate Christmas than ever before. Owls swooped through the halls at lightning speed, delivering packages and brightly enveloped cards. The herbology teacher had enchanted holly and ivy to weave itself round every chandelier and banister. Professor Flitwick could be seen most evenings teaching the portraits to sing carols, and Sirius Black ended the term dressed head to toe in tinsel. This hadn't actually been Sirius's idea. James had started it, using an everlasting sticking charm to affix the decorations to the collars and cuffs of Sirius's robes while he was asleep. If he thought this might embarrass Sirius, he was sorely mistaken. Black adorned his new look and wore it with pride. In fact, by the last day of term, at least 15 other boys had copied him, as well as a group of girls who'd lately taken to following Sirius round. It seemed that every girl in the school had found out about the great snogging race, and the effect was not what Remus had hoped for. While Marlene had acted sensibly in rejecting Black's advances, there were plenty of girls in their year, and even in the year above, who were hoping to help Sirius win the bet. He thought this great fun at first, but after almost a month of being followed by a pack of giggling teenagers, receiving heavily scented love notes, and being interrupted at almost every turn, he'd enlisted Mary as a bodyguard. Mary was perfect for this. Bolshy, ready to speak her mind, and not interested in Sirius at all. "You're such a wuss," she sighed on the last evening of term as they all sat around the fireplace together. James was playing with a golden snitch he'd nicked from the game shed, trying to impress Lily, who had her head down and was frantically finishing her Christmas cards. Peter was nowhere to be found. Marlene was playing a game of chess with Remus, and Sirius had just called Mary to sit closer to him, cautiously eyeing up a group of girls watching him from the corner. "I'm not a wuss," he replied dryly, loosening his tie. "I just like my privacy." "You could always just snog one of them," Mary shot back, stretching out on the couch and draping her legs over Sirius's lap. He let her. "Wasn't that the whole point of this bet?" "Well, yeah," Sirius replied in a measured tone. "But they weren't supposed to know about it. I was supposed to win them over with my charm and roguish good looks."
I'll pause you there. Thank you, Paula, for that $4.99 donation. We appreciate it very much.
And I love the little doggy.
Right?
Thank you so much, Paula. Thank you.
Oh, if you're not getting the notifications, make sure the little bell icon next to subscribe is clicked, and you should get the notifications whenever we go live. That way. Okay, you can continue. I just saw that pop up.
No. It's fine. That's totally fine.
Give thanks where thanks is due.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. "You're not scared, are you?" Mary purred. "I'd be mad not to be scared of girls," Sirius laughed. "You're all mental." "Mary, what's Darren's surname?" Lily asked, looking up from a stack of cards. "Harvey," Mary said. "Good, you're not sending him a card, are you? You've only met him once." "It's nice to get cards at Christmas," Lily smiled, returning to her writing. "All right, but don't send it by Owl. He's a muggle." How have you been writing to him all year?" Remus asked, genuinely interested. "I send the letters to Mum, and she pops them through his letterbox. He only lives across the hall, and there's a phone box just outside Hogsmeade, so we've chatted once or twice." "I didn't know there was a phone box." "Yeah, it's a bit ancient. One of the Ravenclaws told me about it. One of the Ravenclaws told me it was a portkey once during the war, but it still works." She stretched again. "I can't wait to see him," she sighed. Sirius pushed her legs away, pretending to lean over and watch the chess game. "Where are you going for Christmas, Remus?" Lily asked, licking her final envelope. "Not staying here, I hope." "Lupin and Black are at mine again," James said eagerly. Lily gave him a withering look. "Oh, of course." Remus was really looking forward to the Potters this year. He'd only be staying a week, as the full moon fell on the 29th, but that was fine with him. He just couldn't wait for the presents and the decorations and Mrs. Potter's cooking. "I'm starving," Sirius yawned lazily. "Where's Pete? Can we send him to the kitchens for us?" "No idea where he is, actually," James said. "Haven't seen him since dinner." "Is he packing?" Lily suggested. "I'll go and check." Remus stood up, stretching. "I'm hungry too. I think there are some cauldron cakes in my trunk." "You don't say." Sirius got up too, following him. Remus sighed. Sirius spent half his time begging for sweets off the rest of them. Not that he wasn't generous with his own. He just very rarely seemed to have any. Peter was not in the dorm room, but the cauldron cakes were. "Wonder what's happened to him?" Remus rubbed the back of his head. "Check the map," Sirius said, spraying crumbs everywhere, mouthful of cake. Remus raised an eyebrow but said nothing and retrieved the map from his bedside table. He cast the locator spell, and the map quickly highlighted a small flag with the name Peter Pettigrew. It looked as though he was in a broom cupboard near the charms classroom. What are you doing there? Sirius mumbled, stuffing another cake in his mouth. Remus tutted this time, folding up the map. I don't know. You don't reckon the Slytherins got him? Well, maybe, Sirius swallowed. If they put a binding spell on him, he might be stuck in there all night. Let's go and get him then. Shall I get James? Sirius glanced at the door, and Remus knew at once that he was dreading having to pass the gauntlet of girls waiting down there. No, let's take the cloak and sneak down. It won't take long, and only 2 of us fit anyway. Remus shrugged by way of consent. It didn't take too long to rescue Peter. If it didn't take too long to rescue Peter, then maybe they could go to the kitchens afterwards. Sirius had finished his cauldron cakes. They huddled under the cloak together and hurried quietly downstairs, past James and the girls, out through the portrait hole. Bloody typical of Peter, Sirius huffed under his breath. 4 years a marauder and still crap at defensive spells. Maybe they attacked him from behind, Remus suggested. Or maybe there were a lot of them. He didn't know why, but he loved contradicting Sirius. James called it bickering, but Sirius had never given any sign that it bothered him. On they went, through the shadowy stone hallways, toward the Charms corridor. Here, is it this one? Sirius whispered as they reached a door. Yeah, Remus replied. He's in here. He could smell him. Okay, wand ready. 1, 2, 3. Sirius yanked open the door quickly, much to the surprise of Peter, who was very much not in danger, and Desdemona Lewis, who shrieked, Who's there? She stared round, pale and wide-eyed, her hair mussed up and her lips very pink and wet. Pete stared about as well, slightly more suspiciously, but just as rumpled. Probably just Peeves. Sirius began to shudder with laughter, and Remus quickly clamped a hand over his mouth, trying to pull him away from the cupboard. Poor Peter. Go back to my common room. I'll get in so much trouble if I'm caught out of bounds again, Desdemona was saying, straightening her blouse. She kissed Peter daintily on the nose. See you tomorrow, Petey. On the train. Yeah, okay, Peter replied, very distracted, still staring about, looking for their invisible assailant. Remus thanked whatever god there was for his superior strength, as Sirius fought madly to get free and cause even more mischief. Remus did not let him go until Desdemona had disappeared round the corner. Peter was wise to the situation by then. All right, shoot yourselves! He pulled out his wand just as Remus released Sirius, and they both burst out from under the invisibility cloak. I knew it! Peter yelled. You sneak! Sirius crowed, laughing so hard he was holding his stomach. How long had that been going on? A week, Peter replied, turning red. How did you find me? A week? Merlin, Pettigrew! What do you think you're What do you think you're on about, lying to us for a whole week? You would have teased me. We tease you anyway. Can we please go to the kitchens now? Remus sighed. Wait till James hears about this, Sirius said, sounding awestruck. I can't believe it. I really can't. Peter Pettigrew. Ladies' man. Oh, shut up, Peter sulked, shoving his hands in his pockets. I'm going up to the common room. I'm not hungry. Well, the way you were eating Lewis's face off. Shut up! Peter disappeared round the next corridor. Sirius laughed all the way to the kitchens, and was still slightly hysterical on the way back, even laden with treats and goodies from the house elves. At least this means the stupid snogging race is over, Remus said pleasantly as they approached the portrait of the fat lady. Sirius stopped dead in his tracks, causing Remus to bump into him, nearly dropping his bottle of butterbeer. Ugh, I didn't think about that. Well, you don't have to think about it now, Remus snapped, rubbing his elbow where he'd banged it. Pete won. You're right, Mooney. Ugh. That means if I don't get a snog by the end of this year, then I'm more of a loser than Pettigrew. Remus sighed heavily.
Remus will snog him.
Yeah, Remus will help him out a little bit.
Yeah.
He'll give him what he needs.
I knew it, though. I knew Peter was going to win.
We called that. We called that a hot minute ago.
Peter's the cool one.
For once. I seem to see this, like, animosity building up between Sirius and Peter. It's very, like, subtle, but there's always this friction between the two of them. And I think the author does it very well, because it's very subtle.
Yeah.
But it's always Sirius teasing him and him getting upset, and it's this, like, constant thing that I think will eventually erupt into...
Well, we know what it's going to erupt into.
Right.
Yeah, I see that too. I think the only reason they're friends is because Peter hangs out with James.
James is the key.
And Sirius just...
Which, again, is a part of the whole thing. Like, the only reason Sirius and Peter are friends is because of James. And the only reason that everything happens later is because of James. Like,
yeah.
It's very well crafted by the author. She's really setting this up.
Well, James always acted like he was the center of the universe, and it turns out he is.
He actually is.
Because everything happens because of him.
Yeah, he really is the center of the universe.
He's a factor.
He's one of those people that just people gravitate towards, and there's this whole thing going on.
And then implodes and everyone around him dies.
Except for Harry.
Well, yeah. Not for lack of trying.
Not for lack of trying, but
and
Harry,
I guess
Harry did make it.
Yeah.
So there is that.
I guess you kind of could argue that Harry did kind of die when he went to see Dumbledore.
The Horcrux part of him died.
Yeah.
So really Voldemort died.
But
Harry.
He was kind of like, he could have chosen to take the train.
He could have gone on. What is that Dumbledore says? You could.
He was like in purgatory. So that's what I'm saying. Like
No, he wasn't in purgatory. He was like right there at the shoreline of the river Styx.
Well, yeah.
Ready to board the boat.
Okay.
He was like in the sand. Where the
right,
river.
So he was close enough.
Yeah. Still.
He didn't die.
I just want to say that I was channeling my inner Monty Python with my voice for Desmona Lewis.
I was gonna say, she sounds just like Peter. They're made for each other.
I was thinking about Monty Python when I just blurted that out. I was like, oh, Michael Palin, here we go.
I could see it.
Or
and then what feels like another chapter is the whole thing with Ferox.
Yeah, okay, can we just talk about the facts that oh my god, too many F's.
Ferox.
The fact that Ferox smoked cigarettes with Remus, who is underage.
And then lit his cigarette. Oh, let me get that for you.
With his wand that was shorter than Remus's, but much thicker and knobbly.
Don't make it gross. Come on.
How am I making it gross? I'm just telling you what the book said, or the story said.
Yeah, but he's just describing his magical wand.
Which is short, thick, and knobbly.
And apparently Lily...
textured.
Apparently Lily...
Ribbed, if you will.
Apparently Lily has a... and apparently Lily has a thing for Remus.
Fat wand. Thick wand.
Lily wants to go with Remus's wand.
Yeah, she is coming up with every excuse under the book to try and spend time with Remus, and Remus is just like, I just want to be alone. Stop. Get away from me. And Lily is like, "Oh, go to the library. Let's go to the library. Let's do this. Oh, this sounds great." No, F off, B.
Telling you, my prediction is Remus is Harry's father. It's a big scandal. They never told anyone. He's actually Harry Lupin. What?
That statement, you literally just made my soul split into two, and now I have to make a Horcrux because the foulness of that statement has caused my soul to split in half, and now I must find the proper Godzilla in which to store the other part of my soul from the disgustingness of that statement that James is not Harry's father. You are disgusting, sir.
You're Ghidorah. There you go. Okay, moving on.
What Ghidorah? I have more than one. Come on.
Glad you like the audiobooks, Michael.
Oh, awesome. Glad you loved Half-Blood Prince. Half-Blood Prince was a lot of fun to read.
It's your favorite, right?
It's not my favorite.
No?
No.
Isn't that 6?
It is 6.
Yeah,
but
I
it
thought
is
you
not...
said 6 was your
No,
favorite.
6 is not my favorite.
7 is?
7 is my favorite.
Oh, okay. Could have sworn you said 6 at some point.
No, I did a whole thing where I talked about how much more I like 6 now than I did when I first read it.
Oh. I mean, it was all about Snape, so maybe that's why I kind of just,
It is all
connect
about
with it.
Snape, and it is a good book.
Mm-hmm.
So much about Snape. So much about Voldemort. All up in... Let's just slither into all of that. Slytherin goodness. Slytherin Snape. Slughorn.
Leaves
Slughorn.
you green with envy.
It does.
The more we read this, I want to actually look up if Rowling has ever read this fanfic. And if she was like, you know what, it's good enough, I'm going to say that
it's
other
canon.
than, Remus' Sirius relationship. Maybe that is true. I mean, Sirius never took a wife, and Remus,
I mean,
I don't know, maybe Tonks just gave herself manly features.
Sirius was also in jail for like 13 years. Okay. That's Sirius didn't have time to like marry anyone.
You know what happens in prison.
When the Dementor comes knocking.
Suck the soul right out of you. Oh man, I'm bad to do it.
That's what they do in the movies. They're just like...
Well, it's more of a like open mouth. Actually sounds exactly like it, yeah. So there you go. That. There, see, you could have been the voice actress for the Dementors.
What the hell? What am I doing wasting my life away? And everyone tells me, I'm a great voice actress. I do good stuff. And
so good.
How do I go do it? Who do I talk to about this? Hire me! I do lots of things.
Email Disney.
Listen, hire me. Me and Alan Tudyk, we got this. He can do the animals. I'll do the other stuff.
Again.
Right?
Me and Alan Tudyk, we got it.
We got it. We do the.
I love how Alan Tudyk is just an animal voice actor now. So great. He
did Firefly. Absolutely fantastic in Firefly. One of the best characters. And now he's Hey Hey.
And Tuk Tuk.
And Tuk Tuk. And he was the toucan.
See, that's
he was the toucan. He's the toucan in Encanto.
Oh yeah. So see, you could there you go. That could be you. You could be making animal noises for a living. Yeah, the next Shrek movie. There you go. Move over, Eddie Murphy.
I'm a donkey, Shrek. I'm a donkey.
So what's the next chapter?
I don't know.
I think we should have time to get through another one.
I don't know. Not if it's as long as frickin' this one.
I think there's cursing in the fanfic.
That's
so
true.
I feel like it's all right. I get that some people may think, Harry Potter child, but
I think if J.K. Rowling wrote these for adults, Draco Malfoy would be dropping F-bombs left, right, and center.
Oh, yeah. So how long is it? Do we have a... Yeah, it's pretty hefty, but I think we could do it.
We could try. We could try.
All right, so what's this title? Well, I'll let you just get into it. I'm just going to grab a drink, but you can start. I can hear you.
Chapter 64. 4th year. Christmas. Christmas. Very creative. Monday, 23rd of December, 1974. Though Hogwarts had been as picturesque as a Christmas card... That was not what I thought that sentence was going to be. I'm sorry. The tone was totally off on that. Though Hogwarts had been as picturesque as a Christmas card under its blanket of Highland snow, the Marauders stepped off the train in London to grey southern drizzle. The weather continued in much the same way for most of Christmas break, meaning that sledding was off the cards this year, much to Remus's disappointment. It meant that the first few days before Christmas were pretty boring, and they made up for it by making regular trips into the village, underneath Mr. Potter's huge black umbrella, and spent long afternoons in the Muggle cinema there. Remus had convinced them to go. He hadn't been to see a film since he started at Hogwarts, and Stee's gang had been talking about Death Wish all summer, so he was dying to see it. It was just as exciting as he'd hoped, full of revenge and gore, and Charles Bronson reminded him a bit of Professor Ferox. James and Sirius were more interested in figuring out how the projector worked, which suited Remus fine because it meant they agreed to go with him twice. However, boredom soon got the best of them, and on the third visit to the picture house, a distraction presented itself in the form of a group of girls queuing at the ticket booth. At once, James and Sirius stopped discussing the ins and outs of visual perception versus frame rate and started acting very oddly indeed. James made more of an effort to flatten his hair than ever, while Sirius began leaning casually against the wall as if he were James Dean. The girls obviously noticed and kept glancing back and then giggling amongst themselves. They must be freezing wearing miniskirts in December, Remus thought to himself. Finally, the girls finished buying their tickets and went into the second screen. "Moony," Sirius said, not taking his eyes off the gaggle of long legs that had just passed. "How about we see something different today?" "Yeah," James said blankly. Remus looked at the poster above the door. The Great Gatsby. He screwed up his face. It's a romance. What do you want to see that for?" he protested, but it was too late. They were already halfway in. Remus settled down in the front row and resigned himself to his fate. It might not be that bad. He liked Robert Redford and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. He wasn't as cool as Charles Bronson, but he might shoot someone at the very least. Half an hour later, and, as much as he didn't want to admit it, Remus was thoroughly immersed in the film for all its pastel shades and silly costumes. There had been no shooting so far, but he was hoping for the best, and in the meantime, he was rooting for Daisy to see sense and leave her awful husband. Sorry, I hate that book.
No book has made me more frustrated. I think I threw that book while I was reading it.
This book made me so mad. At some point, Remus glanced to his left to see if Sirius and James were enjoying the film too, and found that he'd been abandoned. Twisting about in his seat, he stared into the darkness behind him, and could just make out the dark shapes of his two friends sitting in the very back row, and both engaged in some kind of horrendous grappling match with two of the girls from earlier. Mortified, Remus turned round at once, slouching down in the red velvet seat.
Some kind of grappling match going on.
What did Rowling say when Harry first sees Ron and Lavender? They were like a squid's, like, tentacles roping it. He couldn't concentrate on the film now, and he'd been right anyway. It was a stupid, boring, girly romance, and Robert Redford clearly wasn't going to shoot anyone any time soon. In a split second, he made his decision and quickly left the theatre. It was too late to get a ticket for Death Wish, and the usher behind the ticket stand was giving him a very pointed look, so he shoved his hands deep in his pockets and sloped out, feeling bitter and mean. The town James's parents lived in was a lot posher than the one Remus had grown up in. It was all pretty brick cottages and oak trees. There was a big village green at the centre, and Remus could imagine cricket taking place there in the summer. It was raining now, though, and James had the umbrella, so Remus had no choice but to duck for cover under the nearest bus shelter. There was a little shop right next to the bus stop, and he watched it for a while, checking out the simplest entry points. Not that he could break in. He definitely could. It looked really easy. But what if Mr. and Mrs. Potter found out? They'd never have him for Christmas again. He thought about going back to the house, but he didn't want to explain why he'd left Sirius and James in the picture house like that. Pricks. He kicked the side of the shelter with his heavy boots. An old woman walking past with a little Scotty dog tutted at him loudly, and he swore in return, throwing up a middle finger. Even James had let him down now. James, whose pure and honest adoration for Lily Evans had been the one thing that convinced Remus that snogging might not be that disgusting after all. He'd expected something like this from Sirius, who never had any kind of impulse control anyway. But James? Oi, Mooney! As if by magic, James and Sirius appeared on the other side of the road underneath the big black umbrella. He tried to ignore them, but it was a bit stupid, seeing as they were the only 3 people on the street. "Where are you off to?" Sirius grinned as they crossed to join him under the bus shelter. "Just sitting here," Remus shrugged. "Why'd you leave?" "Could ask you the same." "We only popped out for a minute." "Oh, I don't want to hear about it." Remus covered his ears. He glared at James. "What about Lily? What about, 'It's not time yet, but I don't mind'?" Remus parroted back the words James had spoken in November. James looked stricken for a moment, but Sirius laughed heartily and slapped Remus on the shoulder. "Oh, come off it! Evans isn't going to care if Potter snogged some muggle girl when he was 14. Calm down, Mooney." That did it. If there was anything more like to send Remus into a rage, it was being told to calm down. "No," he growled. "You made me watch that stupid girls' film just so you could grope a couple of muggle birds in the back row." Sirius tossed his dark hair and rolled his eyes. "Merlin, Lupin, we can go and see your beloved Charles Bronson tomorrow if you really want. I mean, excuse us if we want to act like normal teenagers for 5 minutes. Something about this insult struck Remus so sharply that if he'd had his wand, he'd have cursed Sirius right then and there. As it was, he only had his fists. Fortunately, he was pretty good with those, and punching was often a lot more satisfying than cursing. By the time James had wrenched them apart and stood between them, Sirius's nose was extremely bloody, and Remus could feel the beginnings of a black eye forming. "What's wrong with you two?" James huffed, dragging the both of them through the rain back to his parents' house. "He's a tosser!" Remus spat, trying to keep the drizzle out of his sore eye. "He's a wanker!" Sirius returned stuffily, holding his wet jumper up against his nose. "You're both dickheads," James said firmly as they reached the front gate. Mrs. Potter fixed them both up quickly. She was just as quick at healing spells as Madame Pomfrey, then gave them a good telling off, with Mr. Potter standing behind her, trying not to smile and saying, "Boys will be boys, Effie dear." Afterwards, Remus went straight up to the spare room and sat on the bed for the rest of the day doing his holiday homework. He knew it was silly and childish to sulk, but if he had to see Sirius again, he couldn't be sure he wouldn't swing for him. He thought about Ferox telling him, "It's good to be angry," but somehow didn't think that was what the teacher meant. Was he jealous? Jealous that all his friends had copped off with a girl now and he hadn't. Maybe that was it. Remus couldn't really ignore the fact that he was the only one of his friends who wasn't completely driven by his hormones, like a normal teenager, as Sirius had so kindly put it. Ouch. There was that pain again. Remus drew his knees up under his chin, making himself as small as possible. If he had a galleon for every way in which he wasn't normal. He went down for dinner but didn't talk to James or Sirius, limiting himself only to polite interchanges with Mr. and Mrs. Potter. After they were excused from the table, he went straight back upstairs and curled up under the duvet with a book until he fell asleep. He dreamed that he was back in the cinema, trying to watch a strange combination between The Great Gatsby and Death Wish, in which Professor Ferox really was Charles Bronson, black moustache and all, aiming his pistol at the gleaming socialites of West Egg. Something kept nudging Remus's elbow, distracting him from the film. He turned and saw that it was Peter and Desdemona, writhing about in the seat beside him, lips locked. Annoyed, Remus got up and sat in the row behind, returning to the film. Soon after, something else bothered him. It was Mary and Darren. Remus had of course never met Darren, and the boy in the dream looked just like Mulciber, for some reason. They were snogging too. Disgusted, Remus tried to get up once more, but tripped over Lily and James, who were rolling in the aisle. "For God's sake!" he shouted. Lily looked up at him and laughed. So did Mary, and now Peter and James too. Sirius appeared at the very back of the theatre, his body silhouetted by the whirring projector. "Never mind him," he laughed along with the others. "He's not like us." Remus spun around just in time to see Ferox shoot Robert Redford, then woke up with a start. He was hot and sweating under the heavy duvet, and had to fight to free himself. Feeling very silly for having had a nightmare at his age, he clambered out of the large four-poster bed and headed for the nearest bathroom. The clock on the landing read midnight, so he didn't turn any lights on, though he could see a faint yellowish glow seeping out from James's bedroom door. Remus used the loo, then washing his hands and face, taking a few sips from the cold tap before wiping himself dry on his pyjama sleeves. Feeling much better, he returned to his bedroom, just as James's door swung open. "Bloody hell, it's you, Mooney," James whispered, sounding relieved. "What are you doing creeping round in the dark?" Remus shrugged and whispered back. "I can see in the dark. Didn't want to wake anyone up." James nodded and opened his door a bit wider. "Thought you might be Gully, spying on us for Mum or something. Come in, yeah? Let's all be mates again." It didn't take much convincing for Remus to agree. Fighting took up too much energy, especially when you all lived together. He still didn't really want to talk to Sirius, but he went in for James's sake. Sirius was sitting cross-legged on James's bed and frowned when he saw Remus. James sighed. "Come on, we're all friends, right? It's Christmas." Sirius nodded solemnly. Remus nodded back. He joined them on the bed, where he was surprised to see they were poring over some spellbooks. "Homework?" he asked. "Prank," James replied. "Haven't worked out the kinks yet, though." "Oh, okay," Remus nodded. And then, because he didn't want to be awkward anymore, he asked, "How's your nose, Black?" "Fine," Sirius grinned at him, relaxing into humour at once. "You're losing your touch." Remus smirked. "Oh yeah? Ask Snape. Headbutted him on the train in September." "You never did." "Yup." "Bloody hell," James laughed. And he hasn't tried it on since?" "Not yet," Remus said, trying not to sound too nervous about it. "Probably planning something, though. What's the prank?" "Well, tell you when we know how to do it. Might not come off right," James said quickly, closing the book nearest him. Remus raised an eyebrow and said nothing. This only confirmed a suspicion he'd had for quite some time. He didn't want to get into any of that now, though. He'd wait and see if anything came of it. "Sorry I brought up Lily," he said to James. "I didn't mean it. Sirius is right. She won't care. If she's ever stupid enough to go out with you, that is." James shoved him playfully. "Piss off." "At least that stupid conversation is over now, yeah?" Remus asked, hopefully, looking at Sirius. "Yeah, I suppose," Sirius shrugged. "We paid Pete his dues, anyway. What a letdown, though. Snogging, I mean. Don't know what all the fuss is about. Remus didn't say anything, though he was secretly pleased. He wasn't missing out on anything after all. It was all right, James said diplomatically. Probably takes practice. Must get better. It had get better, Sirius said very seriously. James and Remus burst out laughing. Chapter's not done yet. We have 2 minutes.
Well, we're halfway done.
Christmas Day, 1974. Christmas morning was as dark and gloomy as the previous week had been, and Remus was woken by the noise of rain pelting against his bedroom window. Still, the Potter's house was as festive as ever, and the 5 of them settled down to a hearty breakfast with smiles on their faces. Breakfast was quickly followed by presents, the usual fare of sweets, chocolate, new quills from the Potters, books and socks. Remus was very surprised to receive a hand-knitted scarf from Lily in Gryffindor red with gold tassels. He felt a bit bad. He hadn't bought anything for any of the Marauders this year, let alone the girls. She'd never given him a gift before, except for the reading aid, which, he had to admit, had been a pretty good present. He resolved to get something for her next time they went to Hogsmeade. They were just finishing up with presents, Mrs. Potter vanishing the scrunched-up wrapping paper with a sweep of her wand, when a loud, mournful song sounded in the hallway. It was a high-pitched, haunting melody, completely unnatural and completely beautiful. They all turned at once, Mr. and Mrs. Potter withdrawing their wands in a dueling stance, and a strange, ethereal silver bird flew into the room, circling their heads. Remus recognized it at once as a phoenix, or something like the ghost of one. Dumbledore, Mr. Potter said quietly, as the silver phoenix settled magisterially on the mantelpiece. Much to Remus's surprise, the bird opened its beak and spoke in their headmaster's voice. "There has been an attack. I will be with you shortly. Do not allow anyone else entry." And with that the phoenix vanished into thin air. They were all quiet for a while before Mrs. Potter spoke, placing a hand on James's shoulder as if she just needed to touch her son. "Oh, Monty, an attack!" "No need to panic," Mr. Potter said calmly. "Albus will be here soon. Boys, finish cleaning up, eh? I'll be in my study." They tidied up in silence, all waiting to see what would happen next. An attack? What would that mean? Remus's mind went straightly... I'm trying to go fast, I'm sorry. Remus's mind went straight to Greyback, but it wasn't a full moon, so unlikely to have been werewolves. Could it be Voldemort? Or were there other dark wizards out there? Guiltily, he looked over at Sirius, who was staring out of the window at the rain, looking pale and shocked. His family were dark wizards. Did he know anything about it? Surely not. Remus quickly dismissed the idea, feeling even worse. Sirius hadn't been home since summer, and it was common knowledge that his family hated him. Finally, after what seemed like a decade, but can only have been 20 minutes, there was a crack of apparition outside, and Mr. Potter was at the front door. Mrs. Potter joined him, and James, Sirius, and Remus hung back in the hallway, watching. The door opened, and Dumbledore stood there, looking very grave, completely dry despite the rain beating down in sheets. "Fremont? Euphemia?" He nodded politely. Mr. Potter held up his wand. "What was the last thing we spoke about?" "Your son having broken his record for number of detentions this term." Dumbledore smiled, glancing at James, who turned red. This apparently satisfied Mr. Potter, who stepped back to allow Dumbledore entry. "Come in, Dumbledore. Would you like some tea?" "Come in, Dumbledore. Would you like some tea?" Mrs. Potter asked, taking his travelling cloak and ushering him into the living room. "Upstairs, boys," Mr. Potter said sternly. James looked about to argue, but Dumbledore stepped in for him. "If you wouldn't mind, Fremont, I think it is best that the boys hear this. It'll be all over the papers tomorrow anyway." Mr. Potter looked at his wife, then nodded. The small party sat down in the large living room, waiting for Gully to come in with the tea. It was a very odd scene. Christmas cards still glittering on the walls, tinsel sparkling along the picture rails, open presents piled up under the tree, and Dumbledore, still looking uncharacteristically serious in midnight blue velvet robes. Sirius, James, and Remus sat squashed up on the sofa, while Mr. Potter remained standing, pacing the room. "An attack, then?" he said, finally, impatient. "I'm afraid so. The Fraser family, in Newcastle." "Fraser? Never heard of them." "No. Mr. and Mrs. Fraser were both Muggle-born. They had 2 children, not yet old enough for Hogwarts, but as far as we know, showing signs of magical ability." Remus winced at the past tense. Mr. Potter had clearly noticed this too, for he looked very pale and tired all of a sudden. "All 4 of them?" "Yes." Mrs. Potter looked like she was about to cry. "Children!" she gasped. "Children!" "And do we know for sure?" Mr. Potter continued anxiously. "We know it was him." "Voldemort, yes. He left a mark." "A mark?" "It'll be in the papers tomorrow, I imagine. The Daily Prophet was there before I was alerted." "What does it mean? Who were the Frasers?" "Mr. Fraser worked for St. Mungo's," Dumbledore explained. "He recently raised a petition with the Ministry suggesting that healers receive training in Muggle healing techniques. First aid, I believe he called it. This didn't go down very well with certain factions, I'm sure you can imagine." I think I remember Darius saying something. Mr. Potter nodded, leaning a hand on the mantelpiece thoughtfully. "But to kill—" "It hasn't been the first time," Dumbledore said darkly. "But it is the first time they have made themselves known. This mark that was left behind, it has been seen elsewhere. Some of the old families have adopted it, a kind of secret sign of their allegiance to Voldemort. Only not so secret anymore." "Which families?" Sirius said suddenly, looking at Dumbledore. He was tense all over. Remus could feel it. Dumbledore looked at him kindly. "There is nothing so far to link the Blacks to this attack." "So far?" Sirius repeated. "But you know they're—" "It doesn't help anyone to jump to conclusions." Dumbledore held up a hand. "The situation is grave, yes, but we must not lose our heads or allow emotion to cloud our judgment. There are difficult times ahead, and we will all need each other to be vigilant." He said this directly to Sirius and seemed to be speaking to James and Remus too. Remus felt an uncomfortable twisting in his abdomen. He didn't understand everything, but he knew that some great responsibility had settled on their shoulders, one he wasn't sure he could live up to. "I'm not trying to frighten anyone," Dumbledore continued, as if he'd read Remus's mind. "But nor do I wish to devalue the seriousness of today's events. I am working quickly to gather support, a line of defense against Voldemort. I have already spoken to a number of trustworthy associates within the Ministry. Fleamont, can I count on you?" "Of course," Mr. Potter said at once. "Have you spoken to the Weasleys, the Prewetts, the Boneses?" Dumbledore nodded, smiling. "All on my list, of course." "We can help," James spoke up. Mrs. Potter sucked in her breath, her eyes still very pink. "Yeah," Sirius said, eager to show himself equal to James. "You gonna bend on us, sir?" Remus didn't say anything, but he nodded along, hoping that Dumbledore knew that he too had chosen his side. "I hope it will not come to that." Dumbledore was smiling, his forget-me-not blue eyes twinkling with emotion for his pupils. "Thank you, boys." "No," Mrs. Potter said. "They're children, Dumbledore." "I'm of age in 2 years," Sirius said, straightening up, asserting his position as the eldest marauder. "And we're the best in year at defensive spells." "And hexes," James put in, then quickly shut up, seeing the look his mother shot him. Dumbledore chuckled softly. "Indeed," he said. "Your mother is quite right, however. All I ask is that you are on your guard and that you look after each other. Now I must be going. I have other calls to make. Fleamont." Dumbledore stood up and shook Mr. Potter's hand. "I will be in touch. Euphemia." He turned to Mrs. Potter apologetically. "Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. I'm afraid I won't be attending your party tonight." "We may as well cancel it." Mrs. Potter rubbed her arms as if the room had turned cold. "It seems disrespectful." "Enjoy your holidays, boys. Remus, Madame Pomfrey will meet you at the Three Broomsticks Flu Stop on Sunday morning. Remus nodded obediently, and with that, Dumbledore vanished with a loud crack.
Oh, and so it begins. Voldemort is here.
Voldemort has murdered Muggleborns.
Not for the first time, but kind of for the first time. And hello, Willow. Welcome back.
Filth, scum, half-bloods, half-breeds.
And yeah, the blacks aren't connected. You can't.
Not yet, not yet.
Use
Don't
her-
point fingers. We're not
Exactly.
pointing fingers.
But
I
you're
am
doing,
going.
Mama Black's voice.
Curse those half-breeds! Defense of my father's house!
Yes, that. And ow.
You said do it, so I did.
No, I didn't. I said you were doing it. So I was saying we can't assume that the blacks are involved yet. I mean, we know, but as far as this story goes, we don't.
Maybe they're not there yet. Maybe they're not that deeply involved yet.
Maybe they're running like a side gang, you know, and then they're gonna like merge. Voldemort is gonna like
Maybe
them out.
maybe they just maybe they're like corporations in America and they're just donating money to Voldemort's campaign. They're not directly involved right now. It's like shadow funds.
Nah, the blacks come across as people who would be involved. Like the Malfoys come across as those types of people.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe that's better. The Malfoys are like, yeah, we're gonna just pay you this money.
Yeah.
Yeah, the blacks are more of, I won't say it. It's political. I won't say it. It's, nope. Nope.
All right. Well, on that note, we will start switching over so we get Noel in here and we can talk about.
The
Oh.
Snow Leopard.
Oh, I swear, you would think we never brush you.
We do brush her. We brush her.
She's just
We really do.
furry and going bald.
She is a snow leopard. She is a fluff.
Yeah, there we go.
She's a tiny snow leopard. I have to use the bathroom before we start.
Yeah, I figured that's what I said. I'll start getting everything
Get everything ready.
set. Make sure our friend Noel is set. Oh man, I wonder if there's a better fan fiction out there than this. Because so far, this is my money for best fanfic.
Like the best one ever.
Possibly. I mean, I don't really read fan fiction, so.
Sins of the Father is really good, but it's like a totally different genre.
Gotcha.
Guess sometime. It's a Harry Potter fanfiction. But Sins of the Father. But it's not good in the same way. You probably like it like Katie and I would.
I mean, I don't know. I'd give it a shot.
It is kind of naughty.
Oh, it's a naughty fanfic? Oh, maybe that's not appropriate.
It's definitely 17 plus.
Gotcha. Oh, is the mic? Okay, the mic is picking up. That's cool.
Just have to get mine.
So, switching the camera over, guys. I'm still here. We're still here.
Just making my salad when I need. Let them know I haven't damaged them.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
How is it going?
Going good?
Your week going better than it was the other week?
Yes, it is.
Oh, that's good. I know you
Yeah.
were saying that your last week was a little rough.
Yeah. No, it's been okay. It's been pretty good, yeah.
Oh, that's good. enjoying the snow leopard?
Yeah, there's some really cool parts this section.
Oh, absolutely.
What did you like about it so far?
So far, I like that this section kind of went back to what I was complaining about in the first section, which was that it didn't seem like it had a purpose. Like it was very scattered, the stories. But they kind of they found their groove in this section where it just played out more like a journal, and he was jumping around less between his thoughts of the past or whatever. Everything just seemed to flow a little bit better.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like he was pretty heavy on establishing Buddhist concepts.
Sorry.
Um,
Maybe I should just eat that.
yeah, but I liked the adventure part, you know, the journal, all the journeying. It's like really cool travel, nature details.
Oh, absolutely. Like that if there's one thing that oh wow, I can't think of the author now. Uh, Peter Matheson does really well is his descriptions of the environment and the animals are just really well written.
Totally. And I like how the concepts he discusses kind of filters into the language, if you know what I mean. Like you feel those themes just through nature descriptions.
Yeah, I think all of his descriptive words are chose very appropriately.
Yeah.
Nothing was put in there by mistake.
I really like the discussion of Yetis. I think
Oh
that was
yeah.
one of my favorite parts of this section.
Was it you that we were talking about the it starts with a D. It's like Dimitrov's Pass or something. The hiker incident.
In Russia?
Yeah. Maybe
Which
maybe
one
it
was
wasn't
that
you.
again?
It's where these 6 or 8 Russian hikers were going up this mountain pass, and uh, they didn't come back. And when they found them, all the hikers died in very mysterious circumstances.
Wow, so maybe it was a Yeti.
Yeah, well, that was like the superstition, because these campers were found outside of their tent. You know, it gets to be, below like 30 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 degrees Fahrenheit up here. And they were found outside their tent in just like their underwear, and they weren't wearing their clothes.
And they died in
It
crazy
looks
ways.
like something happened that caused them to like flee very quickly. And the manner in which they died was very suspicious.
All right, so
Some
Noel.
of it very gruesome, so I won't go into it here, just
Hello,
in case
by the
people
way.
are sensitive to
Hello! I'm so excited for this weekend. On the Yeti point, I had to ask because as I was reading this through the second time, I couldn't help but think about how Biggs was going to interpret it and also how you were going to interpret it. And I remember telling him, like, I think you're going to like this section better because it's a lot more linear. And then every time he brought up the Yeti, I was literally thinking in my head, like, oh, is Noel going to be on the cryptozoology train with the Yeti thing? How did you like the whole Yeti aspect of this section of the book?
I mean, I loved it. I was saying earlier, it was probably one of my favorite parts of this section was the deep discussion of Yetis and whether or not they may be real. And there was one part about how our DNA was linked with theirs or something. There was like a genetic connection.
How they're maybe like a primitive or some kind of like missing link primate.
I was gonna say,
or
I know
some
Bigfoot.
Undiscovered kind of primate species that is connected to humanity somehow.
Yeah, Bigfoot's like seen as a missing link. Is that the same with Yetis? I really don't know. Are they perceived to be that? Or
Well, so Sasquatch, right? That's the other Yeti.
Right, because
Yeah,
there's like the whole overarching like Bigfoot idea, but then there's Sasquatch, there's Yeti.
It's like there's leopards, there's no leopards, there's Sasquatches, there's Yetis. Same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. See, that's what I kind of thought.
Just different geography.
I just want to make sure.
Just different regions of the world.
Now I really want them to find a Yeti in this book. Like, I want this all to have been like a feint, like it's called the snow leopard, and they find a Yeti.
Wasn't it really? I thought
That'd be great.
When I read this bit, I thought it would have been one of your favorite parts where he sees a creature dart behind like a bush, and it's not a snow leopard, but he doesn't know what it is. It's not a moon bear. It's not a red panda. He doesn't think it's a snow leopard, but he doesn't know what it was, and he's just like, could it be a Yeti? Did I see a Yeti? I don't know.
Yeah, is that the part where he's talking about he saw a surreal object moving toward him or something, but he didn't know what it was?
There's a part where he talks about like he's looking up at this like waterfall, and then there's this like cliff, and then he is looking at it, and then there's a bush like over here, and he sees a dark brownish red animal. He calls it an animal move behind the bush, and he's just like, it was a very dark colored animal, and it was an animal, but I don't know what it was because it wasn't a snow leopard. It wasn't colored like a snow leopard. It wasn't this, it wasn't this, it wasn't this. And then he just starts thinking like, could it have been a Yeti?
Yeah.
I mean, and he mentions multiple times throughout this entire reading that the area that they're going into is one of the least explored by humanity. Could there potentially be some other kind of primate species that has yet to be discovered? We're discovering new species all the time.
And or did he see a Yeti, or are the porters slipping him some magic mushrooms?
Where are they getting mushrooms at this altitude?
I don't know. But obviously the porters don't like them, so they're probably slipping them.
No, not all the porters don't like them. Also, I pitted that to you with the cryptozoology. I'm going to pit this to you.
The Einstein?
No.
Okay.
The Einstein was the last.
No, there was the Einstein.
All right, no, that's not what I was going to ask.
Discussion
about
what is time and how it's only relative to you, and that everyone else's time is different.
Well, that is a very interesting topic of discussion.
Yeah.
But I wasn't looking to go that deep that fast.
General relativity. It's great.
Yes, general relativity. It's great. And it's in Buddhism. Ancient Buddhism from thousands of years ago. And then Einstein comes up with it later. It's really cool. But that's not what I was going to say. I was going to ask you, now having read this section, what is your opinion of George Schaller? Has it changed? Because last time you were like, he's kind of a dickhead.
I'm still on the fence.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think he's like an awful guy, but he may have a-hole tendencies.
So
just like they were talking, there was a section where they were talking about how the porters and them don't get along and stuff, and I'm just wondering, like, are the porters the assholes, or are they just acting this way because GS was an asshole to them?
So
like,
I'm going to point
chicken or the egg,
to a quote. GS says that yesterday he too felt irritable and morose. These damned Ringmo porters are even worse than the dirty commies, and the Sherpas were getting to me too, wasting and breaking everything. You lend them something, and in one day it looks like they'd used it for a month. Yesterday I was just sick of people. That's all. He gazes about him at the still, clear morning, at the canyon side that lies under the heavy snow. That's what this is all about, he says, shouldering his rucksack. To be able to go up into a valley and not come on a pile of human dung. To me, like, every time we get a description of GS and talking about people, I really get the feeling that he's not like a douchebag. He's just...
I never said that, but people can still...
He's not an a-hole. But then they also... Later, he says, in the lowlands, GS was a formal man who could not quite communicate his feeling. In the freedom of the snow mountain, he is opening out in true, warm colors. On 2 occasions, he has managed to say how glad he is of my company on this trip, and he astonished me the other day in Ringmo when he spoke of the impulse to cuddle a child. The child being snot-nosed and filthy, the impulse was stifled. And so, for all his thorns, a gentleness shines through. The Sherpas see it. They are fond of him and respect him very much. Fu Tsering, hunkered on his heels, is often seen to be humming contentedly at Chorch's side.
It's obviously the lack of oxygen at that altitude is causing him to hallucinate and act this way.
I think what it is that I don't know. Like, I read those 2 passages and I just very much related to.
No, I'm not saying like he is a bad person. It's just he's not very good with people and comes across as
he's not a people person, and he's much more free and at home when he's not around people. And there's another time when Peter says that like he got mad because George like walked by and just threw a book into his tent.
Yeah.
And then just like walked away, and he thought it was really rude, but then later on retrospect, he's like, well, George likes his privacy. So maybe because he likes his privacy so much, he's thinking that other people would also like their privacy. And so he wasn't being rude. He was just like, well, maybe you're doing something. Maybe you're busy. I'm just going to plop it in here and whatever. And I don't know. I'm just like, dude, like, I feel George on so many levels. I'm just like, get away from the people. Get away from all the stuff and just get out, get away.
You come to some of the most remote mountains in the world, and you're still surrounded by people.
Yeah, I feel like he's literally been trying to go to this super remote place, and there's still just like, it's not just him and the author, but it's him and the author and all these other people with all of their tendencies of like taking shit and demanding more money and like all this material earthly shit, and he's just like, I just want to look at sheep and study and leave me alone. I just want to do what I gotta do. You know, like, I don't know. When I read this the first time, and as I'm reading it through the second time, I just over and over relate to both the author and Schaller. And I feel kind of like at home in both sides, because I'm like, I love the spiritual journey aspect, but at the same time, I'm also like, yeah, get the hell away from people. You can just study nature and just be left alone. It sounds great. Like, I get it. I don't know. He's such a brilliant scientist that I think some people who are just so brilliant in that way, like, they just don't relate to people very well. They just don't.
I mean, obviously, yeah. I don't know. Noel, what do you think?
Yeah, what's your opinion of Schaller?
Well, he's just a driven guy. He's just really driven by what he wants to do.
That's the equivalent of saying, "Oh, that's just how he is."
No. I think what Noel is saying, when you're a human, and correct me if I'm wrong, Noel, when you're a human and you are so passionate and so driven by a single goal, that's all you can see, and nothing else matters except attaining that goal. And when you're in pursuit of something of this magnitude, and you see it as something of such great magnitude, like, hurting people's feelings is irrelevant. And you just like, I need to do this thing. You don't understand. I need to do the thing.
I was just joking, but okay.
Okay. Sorry.
No, but that's, yeah, totally. Nailed it. Yeah.
I don't know. I just see a lot of myself in him. I just really understand his.
Yeah, except I don't think you could ever make this journey they're taking.
I want to.
with your fear of heights and some of the places they
I can
describe going,
overcome
like
it.
when
I
they're
can
in the,
overcome it to go see the snow leopard. I can do it. If there is anything I would risk great heights for, it would be to see a snow leopard. That is the only thing that I would risk great heights and precipices for.
Now,
is
see,
to see a snow leopard.
I'm hearing this and I'm just like, yes, I want to go on this journey. It sounds awesome and challenging. Like, but I mean, if you found yourself in a situation like Peter was in, where the trunk fell, right, where he was on this big hill with like the snow, yeah, you would die.
You would die. What are you saying? I would die
because I think you would just be too frozen from vertigo.
By that point, maybe not, though.
Yeah,
because I would have climbed
if
so much.
That far,
if I've made it that far, I would have gonna cut. I want to point out, actually, a passage again. I talk a lot when we talk about the snow leopard. I'm sorry, but I am going. This is just the perfect time to talk about this. All day I have thought about the eerie trance state of these people as they passed me on the ledge, and wonder if this might be a primitive form of the tantric discipline called lungom, which permits the adept to glide along with uncanny swiftness and certainty, even at night. Quote, the walker must neither speak nor look from side to side. He must keep his eyes fixed on a single distant object and never allow his attention to be distracted by anything else. When the trance has been reached, though normal consciousness is for the greater part suppressed, it remains sufficiently alive to keep the man aware of his obstacles in his way and mindful of his direction and goal. Ngom is literally wind concentration, with wind or air equivalent to the Sanskrit prana, the vital energy or breath that animates all matter. If matter is energy, then lungom may simplistically be regarded as a manifestation of mind over matter, of matter returning to energy, with a corresponding reduction of weight and gravity, so that it flows.
Oh, I've done that before. I feel like everyone have you ever not like driven to a place
and
then
really deep and beautiful, and he's just like, yeah, I done that shit.
Well, I mean, have you ever? Everyone has to have done it. You drive to a place and you get there and you get out and you don't remember the drive at all. It's like you were completely out of it. You weren't there driving. Yeah. So there you go.
I love that scene where he's like hands and knees and he's like, blah, blah, blah. And then the other guys come and they're just like single-minded focus. And it's just a demonstration of the ability of the mind to just concentrate so much power and energy into just performing this single task to ensure survival.
Also muscle memory, because I'm sure they make that journey quite a bit. So they're very used to it.
Not in the wintertime, though. Half this whole section of the book is like, oh, don't go up there. It's snow. It's too bad. Don't go up there. Ooh, you gonna die. Ooh.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying that they probably make this journey quite a bit.
All right, Noel, you talk for a minute. We've talked a lot. You go for it.
Well, there is a part in this about people who can fly.
Yes! You know exactly what you're talking about.
How monks can attain the power of hovering or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, that's awesome. And I feel like if this guy thinks it, I believe him.
It's all about training your mind to the extent that you what I got from this is that you train your mind to the extent that you really understand and are aware of every single molecule in your body and the surrounding environment and being able to manipulate it. And it's
totally
awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So
look at him. He's like, that's bullshit.
I was gonna ask if you ever saw the video clip. Well, it was in a documentary. this guy was traveling to this this monastery to speak with these monks or train with these monks, and a part of the climb is basically this near 90-degree vertical rock face, and he's there like on all fours, like trying to climb up it, and then this monk comes by carrying something in his arms, and he's just walking up it like no problem, like we would walk upstairs.
Wow.
I think that's kind of the same thing. Here's another question I have for you guys. What do you think about all of the little bits and pieces about his relationship with his wife and her dying of cancer and his whole process and all of that and how he handles it, like the story with the bowl?
Oh,
And,
yeah.
And how he thought he missed his opportunity to give it to her, and
over and over and over, and he's just like, I miss my chance, I miss my chance, I miss my chance. But then finally, like, he gives it to her, and she's in like a drugged out coma, and she grasps it, she looks at it, she knows, oh, this is the bowl I wanted, this is from Switzerland. Like, she knew instantaneously. And just like all the other things he does, like, he talks a lot about her and her being sick and how he got through it or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of adventure that he's on is going to inevitably create memories that you hold on to from your past to act as a guide through these unknown waters, you know? Like, you always have to have a psychologically rooting thing. So in that case, it was his memory of her.
Mm-hmm. What?
That's all you got? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I mean,
I thought he
really
handled
well
it well.
done.
I
think
thought
it
it
all
was
it's really well done, yeah.
Yeah. I think he handled it like how you're supposed to handle it.
I also thought that there were quite a few mentions again of environmentalism, conservationism, the importance of preserving species. They talk about musk deer, which I thought was pretty cool. I actually just really liked this story just because I thought it was really fun. The story about George Schaller owning a raven in college, and that was how he like met his wife. She just saw him like talking to this raven and telling the raven to like cut its bullshit, and she was just like, what? And he like had this pet raven for like years and years, and
It's Bran.
it's Bran. And it just sort of humanizes him a little bit, I think.
Cold Hands right now.
That's
where they're going. They're going north.
Also, we got our first solid evidence of snow leopards in the area.
Wait, we did?
They found a poo-poo.
Yeah, I really hope we see one. Right. I really want to see one.
They found a poo-poo.
Oh, yeah, they did.
And Schaller picks it up and he bags it and stuff. And they found a toe beam print.
Mysterious. Is he stalking them, waiting for one of them to fall?
Panthera uncia.
Also said that there's no recorded cases of snow leopards eating people or killing a person.
That's right.
Is that still true?
Yes.
To this day? Well, I mean, they're still reclusive. I mean, what's the chances?
Well, one of the issues that they're running into is that because of global warming, Asiatic leopards are starting to move into territory that would actually be snow leopard territory, but because it's so warm, the snow leopards are having to try and stay higher and higher, so leopards are moving into that area.
Well, there's only one solution to this. We need to get a team of activists together and shave all the snow leopards. Hashtag shave the big cats.
Still to this day, there has never been a verified snow leopard attack on a human being.
Ah, see, they're sweet. It was a joke about the shaving the cats. It's trying to lighten the mood.
You don't joke about shaving cats. Don't joke about cats. No jokes about cats.
I thought you liked the hairless cats.
I like hairless cats. They're supposed to be hairless. They're bred to be hairless. Snow leopards are not supposed to be hairless.
But it would help them.
No.
Wait, so you know how like Egyptian royalty had cats?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what if wherever the snow leopard is from, they are the cats to the, the Egyptian people? What if there's pyramids here? That's what I'm saying. I want to see a Yeti walk out of a pyramid at the end of this book.
I think you are going to be extremely disappointed, and I haven't even read the book. That would be awesome, though. That's like, Jesus, that's like an Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull type ending, you know? Total left fielder. Just the Yeti walks out with a pet snow leopard.
Yes, this is perfect. Oh my god. You can make a whole story out of this.
Like, if that were to happen, I stand behind the statement I made at the beginning of this, that those porters are feeding them magic mushrooms.
So, no.
Smoking the peace pipe. Those weren't shiitakes.
I'm going to direct us to a more serious passage.
Oh, that's no fun. Okay.
You were just talking about naked snow leopards, okay? Also, most recent research has suggested that big cat origins actually started in Asia versus Africa, because they recently found fossil evidence of a super old cat in Asia that is older than any fossil records found in Africa, and the snow leopard is actually considered the most, quote, primitive of all the big cats.
So could it be that the reason why humans ended up migrating out of Africa could be that lions and the big cats moved in?
No.
Oh.
Because there's fossil evidence of humans and lions actually coexisting together.
Well, yeah, but at what time? Obviously, people stayed in Africa. Like, we didn't all just move out.
So just the wusses did.
Yeah, pretty much.
Gotcha. I don't know.
That's all I'm saying.
I don't know much about human.
Or maybe it was just the humans in the lands that the big cats like took over as their territory. You know.
I think it's more that
That's
humans
advanced.
took over the lands that the big cats had as territory.
I know, but it might have been both ways. Like, humans might have been there, and then the cats from Asia, started migrating downwards, and that forced the humans out, so then they went northwards.
I'm talking about, like, fossils that, like, are saber-toothed cat era. Like, old.
Yeah, but saber-toothed cats were Ice Age.
I know. I'm saying, like...
Humans were in Africa long before that.
Right. I'm saying, like, old records.
The dawn of humankind was old.
I know.
So I don't know what you're saying.
Humans were also present in Europe at the same time that the European cheetah was present in Europe.
This doesn't help me with a time frame. I'm still so confused.
2 million years ago.
Okay.
So, I don't know if it was running away from big cats that necessarily did anything.
Yeah, but when did the cats move into Africa?
I haven't read the book yet.
Okay, so we don't know. We need timestamps.
All right, well, I need to read the book first.
Okay.
I read a brief article. I read a brief peer-reviewed article 2 years ago. I don't remember what the date was. I'm sorry.
Okay, you could have just said that. I was just asking questions. Though.
So, hang on. I just want to talk about this real quick. To the east, a peak of the Dwalagiri shimmers in a halo of sun rays, and now the sun itself bursts forth, incandescent in a sky without a cloud, an ultimate blue. That south over India is pale and warm, and cold deep dark in the north over Tibet. A blue bluer than blue, transparent, ringing. Yet that blue went unperceived until quite recent times. And the many hundred allusions to the sky in the Ring Veda, the Greek epics, even the Bible, there is no mention of this color.
You know, I've actually read articles on this, and there are theories that we actually, at the time, just didn't have a word for blue. Other people suggest that maybe we only developed the ability to see blue waves of light in recent times. It's very interesting.
So, wow, that's crazy. Because some people have blue eyes, so, like, what color was that if they couldn't see blue?
Well, blue and green eyes are a mutation. At the dawn of human evolution, everyone's eyes were brown. Brown is the dominant gene. Blue, green, any other color is a mutation.
I'm a mutant.
Yeah.
I know that it's brown is predominant, blue is recessive, and then green is more recessive than blue.
Mm-hmm. And then
there's like heteochromia and all that kind of crazy stuff, and albino and all that.
Yep. So yeah, there's some people who think that we only later developed the ability to see the blue spectrum because it's at the end of the spectrum. It's closer to the ultraviolet. So they're saying we could only see the lower colors for a while. And then other people just say, well, we just didn't have a name for it at the time.
Okay.
Because blue was also not used in like paintings or anything like that at the time. Like we couldn't develop blue pigment.
Maybe we couldn't catch butterflies.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I've told you. There's. Sorry, Noel, go ahead.
I was just thinking, if they looked at the sky, what would they see? Like what would? I don't get it.
I mean, I guess it would be more yellowish without the blue.
Okay, just wondering. I just wanted to know what color it used to be.
I guess yellow, if you couldn't see blue.
Right. But I mean, if you look at cave paintings and stuff, though, there's lots of colors that aren't used. Not just blue, but there's no green used either. There are lots of colors that aren't used. I don't know. It's necessarily they couldn't see blue, as that like they didn't have the materials around to make blue.
Yeah, that's why.
Or green.
That's why, like, the leading theory is that they just didn't have a name for it.
But I mean, the sky is also like it's the sky and it's God and it's all encompassing. Mm. So I don't know as they would necessarily just call it blue. I just love that description because he's just like a man of the 20th century looking up at the sky and seeing this color of this sky that is just so blue, and he's just like certain that like he's never seen anything so blue or so pure, so beautiful that like no one has ever described this color blue before. And it's so inhospitable that he's seeing something that so very few people ever get the chance to see, and he's just looking at the color of it, and he's just so in awe of the beauty of the color. And being an artist, I was just like,
blue.
And blue is also like a super spiritual color. It is the spiritual color.
Well, and it's very rare. There's actually, well, like you were saying, there's the only naturally occurring blue pigment is in one species of butterfly. That's it. Everything else is a trick of the light.
Perceived to be blue.
Yeah. Like other butterflies are blue, but it's the shape of their wing. They have these microscopic little indentations and stuff that basically only allows the blue light to escape, and all the other light kind of, the wavelengths just get trapped and never reach our eyes.
So it sounds like there's a conspiracy going on where there was like a secret war of colors, where somehow like yellow was invaded by the agents of blue and took over and like started a new regime, and now no one remembers the yellow, and now it's like
no one remembers the yellow days. I was there.
Yeah.
So, do you guys think that Gyaltsen and Tukten are gonna come back? Or are they gone? They're gone for good.
They're gone. They're gone.
Yeah, I don't know. I hope we do, but I don't know. I don't think so.
There have been a lot of like foreboding warnings about how it's snowy, it's winter time, it's yucky, you're not gonna make it, it's yucky, it's snow. But then they finally get up to the point where they're like right there, about to go to Crystal Mountain, and that's like what our author has been there the entire time to see, is to go up to this temple at Crystal Mountain and talk to the llama.
Yes.
He's almost there.
Will he get there? We did hear an avalanche off in the distance.
We did hear an avalanche. That's true.
Are they going to make it? Or more avalanches going to happen?
What do you think, Noel?
Are more avalanches going to happen?
I mean, the next section is called Crystal Mountain.
Okay, so they must make it. Well, I mean, he wrote this story, so he obviously has to make it.
Maybe there will be an avalanche, but it's as they're leaving Crystal Mountain. And like, yeah, we saw the snow leopards, now we're leaving. Then an avalanche comes, and then there's a Yeti going to be surfing on it.
Peter wrote this book while he was trapped inside of an ice cave.
Oh my god,
after
you guys are
an
so
avalanche.
Silly. You guys are so silly.
Yeah. It like devolves into a diary where like each entry is shorter than the last one, and it's like it's progressively more insane.
I could see it.
You guys. Well, the next
I
section.
really did like this section. I gotta say, this book is getting really. I just think it's really hitting its stride in this section for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
I had one of my favorite lines.
Yeah.
On page 102, he's talking about like Zen, like Buddhism and stuff.
Yeah.
And it says, one intuits truth in the Zen teachings, even those that are scarcely understood, and now intuition had become knowing, not through merit, but it seemed through grace.
Yeah. That was I had multiple things section
It's
here.
almost like Buddhist ideas are just intuitive, and if you try to understand them, it's a natural thing to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had something here about the death of the wife. Toward the presence who prepared me for Dee's death, I was filled with gratitude, quite different from the thankfulness I felt toward Eido Roshi and toward Dee, toward family and friends and children. It was not that I felt grateful to myself, yet the question seemed inescapable. Where could that vast smile reside, if not for my own being? In chanting the Kanon Sutra in my desperation, I had evoked Avalokita, but I had been paying no attention to the words, only to Dee, who sat in the line of Buddha forms across the way, and so it was hard to identify Avalokita with that presence unless he was also Dee, also myself. In short, what Meister Eckhart meant, the eye with which I see God is the eye with which God sees me. or Jesus Christ, I and my Father are one. Surely those Christian mystics spoke about the Lord who is seen within. So it's very much like
I love that.
It just it's so good. God is within us and without us all at the same time.
Yeah, I love the Meister Eckhart one. The eye with which I see God is the eye with which God sees me. It's almost like we're on equal footing in a sense because
Yeah.
we have access to the same tools, like the eye, you
Yeah.
know, the tongue, whatever. And it's just cool. It's a cool way to look at it.
And also that I am a part of God and God is also a part of me, and it's we're all one happening at the same time right now.
Oh yeah, that section actually made me think of something. Have you guys heard of, I think it's Mashu Lake? You probably have.
Off the top of my head, it's not ringing a bell, but if you talk about it, maybe
Lake of the Gods.
Yes.
Hokkaido.
Yes, I have heard of Lake of the Gods. Okay.
I don't know why it made me think of that.
I was gonna say it's Japanese. Lake, I know what it is.
Yeah, this lake in Hokkaido that is so remote that it's actually forbidden to go down to the shore. They have like observation towers. It's on this caldera. So it's this old volcano caldera, and the sides are so steep. Number one, you could probably die just trying to get down there. And number two, they want to preserve it. It's considered like the world's clearest lake.
Except for the lake in this book, maybe.
No.
But the lake in this book is really unapproachable.
That's true, but Hokkaido is considered the clearest lake in the world. But it's like, I think it's like 80% of the time it's covered in this fog. So you can't see it.
Can't see it.
But I guess superstition says if you go there and you see it, women, if they can see the lake, won't like I think it was like find love or marriage or something like that till later in life. And if men go there and they can see the water, then they won't be successful until later in life.
That's so funny that the mist covers it, because the author talks time and time again about how enlightenment and truly understanding is like clearing the fog to the world of understanding. It's very cool. I have to pee again. I'm very sorry.
Okay. But yeah, I just thought it was cool. Like I was
very interesting. Yeah, very interesting.
I definitely wouldn't mind going there though and seeing it. Or hopefully not seeing it, because I don't want to wait till any later in life to succeed. I'm too old already. I don't got time for that.
Just it's like how everyone said they wanted to go to New Zealand to hike Mount Doom.
Oh yeah.
Like after the movies came out, it was like everyone wanted to go do that. And I bet you a lot of people still do that. Mm-hmm. So that kind of would be cool. As totally cliche as it sounds.
When we were in Hawaii, I really wanted to hike the Stairway to Heaven.
Oh, you said that, yeah, but then you said that people had like died on it or something.
Yeah, that didn't bother me, but the people we were going with didn't go with us. I didn't feel like going by myself. And number 3, it's actually illegal.
Oh, yeah.
You can get big fines for doing it. And
I didn't feel like paying that shit.
Yeah, pretty much. That's about it. So there were a few reasons I didn't do it. But it would have been pretty awesome to do it.
You know what this kind of reminds me of, this book? Is Lovecraft in a weird way.
Lovecraft? How so?
Well, a lot of his stories kind of start off with an adventure aspect. Like, someone by themselves gets lost in nature and they find some, ancient stone or whatever it is.
Oh, but he found this lake.
Build up.
Yeah.
What?
I said he found this lake. Is there going to be some fish people in there or something?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's cool that the whole nature thing I don't know. That's the similarity, I guess, is how they use nature.
The setting that they use, and yeah, I
Yeah,
can see it.
and especially like when it comes to writing horror with nature, it's always referring to something you can't see. Like it's like a force that's behind the trees, you know?
Yeah.
It's just this unknowable. It's I don't know. It's hard to describe, but yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that plays into like our deepest fears, nature and what we don't know.
Right.
Ultimately is the scariest thing because it's also the most plausible.
And what we don't know is a lot, and yet we continually destroy and kill everything, even though we don't know anything about it.
Because then we don't have to worry about not knowing about it anymore. It's not there.
I'm also just going to throw it out here on a way off tangent that this entire section of the novel very much felt like a build. Like a build up to a climax that's going to occur.
Well, it is the story, so I hope so. But yes, I agree. It was definitely...
No, like the first section definitely felt like here's an introduction, here's a lot of background information and different things, and then this very much felt like a crescendo. Like, he has moments of extreme clarity and almost enlightenment where he just feels emotions that are so big that they're too big. And they're climbing and they have difficulties and they have more difficulties. They have more difficulties and more difficulties. And then he gets pissed off at some point. And this whole section just seemed like a whole lot of struggle. It was very linear, but it's a whole lot of struggle. And it's actually my least favorite section of the novel.
Well, I think that so far it seems like this novel is going to follow like a mountain type plot. Like now we have the difficulties and everything as they're climbing it. The next one's Crystal Mountain, so they're probably going to reach the peak. Or is there only 2 more sections in this?
There's 2 more sections to read, yep.
So next they're probably going to reach the peak and it's going to be, his enlightening moment and that sort of thing. And then the last chapter is probably going to be their journey down, and it's going to be kind of his fall into despair. Something is going to be disappointing, but then probably at the end he's going to like find himself or something. The whole journey up and down. You end up where you began, type thing. Because they're climbing up this mountain. I'm just thinking like the peak and how a story goes, and
so
that's all I could. That's what I imagine is going to happen.
Do you guys think we're going to meet the snow leopard in the next section?
I hope so. I really hope so.
I don't know, but I think if we're going to, it's going to be in the next section. If we don't in the next section, I'm going to say we're not going to see him.
How would you guys feel if we didn't see a snow leopard in the book?
I'd say that this is very much false advertising.
I would be into that if that was true, because it would be a great twist. And it could represent, the book is called The Snow Leopard. So it's like, oh, we're going to see one. But if we don't see one, then it's like, well, what is it? Because we don't know what it is.
Oh, no, I'm suing. You said you called this the snow leopard. If there's no snow leopard.
But like, I don't know. I just love that the title becomes something you can't explain then. It's just like this undefined term. I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. But I don't think, I hope we see one.
I'm just asking questions.
I'm just saying, if there's no snow leopard, where are we in the world? I mean, he could have named this book Jumanji for all he cared.
Is it just me? Are there like tons of birds everywhere in this story?
Oh yeah, what happened? What happened with the eagle that he saw in North America? That he saw flying above the mountain.
Actually, speaking of animals, I want to make 2 more points.
What it was hunting.
2 more points. He sees a hoopoe again, which is a type of bird.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 1970s, he sees them multiple times. And currently, today, They are actually one of the most extremely endangered birds in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just a little context there. And then at another point, he says, I don't know. I marked so many pages that I don't remember what I marked. But there is a section where he talks about how he's up in the mountains and it's really cold, and then he looks and he sees a lizard sunning itself on the rocks. And all I could think of was the ice lizards from the Ice Dragon.
Oh.
And I just couldn't help but wonder if, like, maybe Martin thought about, like, Asian Himalayan lizards when he wrote the book.
Maybe.
Just throwing that out there. Because he sees a bird of prey take some long thing, and he realizes later, oh, it's a skink. It's like a mountain skink. It's like a cold weather skink. And I'm like,
I mean, skinks do look like dragons, so.
So they do kind of look like dragons. Yeah. I don't know. This is a little tidbit.
I'm down for dragons. Like I said, I want to see Yetis. I want to see dragons.
I want to see a fight at the end on Crystal Mountain. Yeti, dragon versus snow leopard. Let's go.
Yeah. For the fate of the world, and it doesn't matter why, it just is.
Exactly. And GS better just stop Peter from interrupting and say, let them fight.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Oh, man.
They need
and
to
then all the
regain
porters
balance.
are going to be placing bets. There's going to be like a whole economy of bookies, and they'll invite all their friends to watch the
epic battle.
Yeah.
Whipping out their phone. No, I know it's a long hike, but you got to get up here right now.
So does the snow leopard then look and say, finally, a worthy opponent?
Yeah, there you go. It's the snow leopard from Kung Fu Panda.
What is his name? I can't think of his name. Oh, it hurts.
I wish they'd make another
Shang-Long or something.
Panda.
They were good, right? All three were solid, weren't they? They were all different. They were good. All the villains were different. The mood was different. Those were all really solid movies. I enjoyed them.
Yeah. Totally. Me too.
Shy Long?
Yeah, I think that
was the snow leopard.
I'm gonna look it up right now. Tai Long.
Tai Long.
I was close. Tai Long.
Do you guys even understand how much I love snow leopards?
Yes, I do.
Do you really?
I do.
Panthera uncia. Uncia.
Yeah, it sounds like a rave.
They're such wonderful kitties.
But on that note,
yeah, I know we've gone way over, and we talked about a lot, and I marked so many pages that I didn't even talk about, but it's okay. Because we are more than halfway through the Snow Leopard, and so next time we're going to read the entire section, and it starts at Crystal Mountain. And then it ends on November 17th. That's the last entry we read, is November 17th. And then the final section is The Way Home. So we're going to read that section next.
About Panthera.